Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be explaining the Netflix movie Hypnotic. Enjoy! Late at night, Andrea Bowen, who is frightened, dials a detective because she fears a man is monitoring her, but she can't reach him. She enters the elevator to leave. An unknown call comes through and Andrea, mistaking it for the detective, picks up. The man on the other end tells her, "This is how the world ends." The elevator suddenly stops operating, startling Andrea. The doors refuse to open and while she pleads for rescue, the walls of the elevator begin to shut in on her. Jen arrives late to the house of her friend, Gina, for a housewarming party. Jen still enters the party and is introduced to Dr. Colin Mead, who is Gina's therapist, who she highly recommends. Throughout the party, Jen keeps making eye contact with Brian, her ex-fiancé. While they chat together, Jen heroically stops Brian from eating the food that contains sesame oil as he is allergic to it. When Jen is about to go home, Brian confesses to Jen that he still misses her and offers her a ride home. Instead, they end up sleeping together again, despite not wanting to get back at him. The next morning, while talking to her friend about Brian, Gina recommends that Jen should see Dr. Mead for a therapy session, as she isolates herself, is unemployed and has just slept with her ex-fiancé. She agrees to see a therapist. She arrives at Dr. Colin's office and starts her session. Jen explains that she isn't motivated to do anything. The doctor explains she has a deeper issue that is causing her bad habits and asks her to tell him about Brian. She explains that they were engaged, but had a stillborn at 6 months. Due to the incident, they decided to call it quits. The doctor listens and afterwards asks her if she has ever tried hypnotherapy. The doctor explains that she is the only one going to be in control of her subconscious and the hypnotherapy will help with her trauma. Because all she wants is to be happy again and she agrees to try it. The hypnotherapy session lasts for 1 hour, but she can't remember anything from the session. 3 months later, Jen's life is back on track and has succeeded in finding herself a job. While doing yoga with Gina, Jen tells her that she has been seeing Dr. Colin once a week for about 3 months. Gina complains as Dr. Mead refuses to do hypnosis on her despite asking. That night she has a dream where she is in bed with Dr. Mead. He is being intimate with her. She quickly snaps out of the dream. Going out the next morning, she bumps into Dr. Mead. She informs him that she has got the job, so he buys her a celebratory coffee, as a chance for them to catch up. She tells him that she now has motivation for things like exercise and meditation. They chuckle with each other and reveal that he was married once to his wife, Amy, who he had loved dearly but had died. He asks her about Brian and she tells him that she has actually been avoiding him. Dr. Mead suggests that she invites Brian to her house for dinner to patch things up. She agrees and calls Brian to have dinner with her. At the store, preparing to shop for ingredients, she gets a call from an unknown number. She picks up and is immediately entranced. She comes out of her entrancement at a house with dinner already set. She hears a choking noise and sees Brian on the floor having an allergic reaction. He goes to hospital in a coma and she explains to Gina that she can't remember anything about the night before. Jen goes to another therapy session with Dr. Mead. It's been 8 days and Brian is still at the hospital. Colin asks her if she can remember anything from that night, to which she says no. She starts to question that hypnosis sessions may be what caused her periods of missing time. Colin proceeds to manipulate her doubts about the hypnosis into feelings of fear and convinces her to continue doing hypnosis with him. That night, she has another scene of having an intimate moment with the doctor. Waking up at night, she sees a receipt with sesame oil on it from the shop. She finally remembers that the man on the phone told her to carry the fire, triggering her into a state of entrancement. She finds the sesame oil and remembers putting it in Brian's food, and while he is struggling to breathe and she drinks wine, ignoring his pleas for help. Jen starts to get suspicious and searches up the doctor. She sees an article of a young woman who was found dead in an elevator. The woman had taken out a restraining order against her psychiatrist as he was tormenting her through hypnosis. Jen brings this information to Gina and tells Gina she has periods of missing time after meeting with Dr. Mead, similar to Andrea. Dr. Colin was a ghost until 6 months ago, when his patient took out a restraining order against him for psychological and emotional abuse. And then 3 days later, the patient shows up dead. Despite all the evidence, Gina doesn't take it seriously. They meet Detective Wade, who worked on the case between Andrea Bowen and Dr. Colin Mead, to find out more information that would help Jen. They explain Jen's situation with the detective and he explains that he didn't have enough evidence to get anywhere with Andrea's case. He presents a video recording of Andrea in her last moments, as she picks up a block number in the elevator and sees her behavior change drastically. Andrea was reacting to extreme fear, and whatever she was seeing in that elevator was what caused it. The detective tells her to find a new therapist and they both leave the station. Outside, Gina reveals that Dr. Colin had hypnotized her too that same week and both of them agree to stay away from him. The detective is still bothered about the Andreas case and sits through some evidence to find 2 more women who have died in similar ways to her. Jen still calls Dr. Mead for a last-minute appointment to record their conversation. Leaving the session, she listens back to her recordings when she was hypnotized. Dr. Mead asks her the real reason why she has shown up suddenly and she tells him that she doesn't trust him due to the case with Andrea Bowen. She admits that she was at the police station with Gina to find out more information about him, while telling him that she is recording their session. Panicked, Jen calls Gina to tell her that Dr. Mead knows everything and tells her to go home immediately, but the phone cuts out when she tries to explain. Gina instead picks up an unknown number and Dr. Mead tells her that this is when the world ends. Gina is now in a trance and can see a spider on her. She screams at her husband to take the spider off, but he can't see anything. She accelerates her car in panic and crashes her car into a truck, killing herself and her husband. Detective Wade turns up at Colin's office. He questions if he has done hypnosis on Gina. Doctor says he has, but only to treat her anxiety and arachnophobia. He also reveals that Andrea Bowen had claustrophobia and treated her for it. Detective Wade reveals that he has noticed that Dr. Colin only uses hypnotherapy on only a few of his patients that share the same characteristics. All the patients so far that he has used hypnotherapy on are dead apart from Jen. Jen is grieving the death of Gina and the detective checks up on her. He reveals that Gina was only hypnotized when Jen had started asking questions as she was getting in the way. When Andrea started asking questions, she too ended up dead. Detective Wade asks Jen to stay low in the meanwhile as the doctor has been stalking her. Detective Wade leaves, but someone suddenly knocks on her door and Jen opens the door to see Dr. Colin there. He pushes his way in and shouts stop at Jen, who immediately stays still. He asks her what he did to make her not trust him and says that everything he does he is doing for her. He had even taken care of Gina and her husband as they were just in the way of them being together, and will soon take care of Detective Wade too. While leaving, he tells her to relax. Now free from the doctor's mind control, she tries to call the detective to warn him of Colin, but his phone is dead. While watching TV, he hears a slight creaking in his house. A patient of Dr. Colin's climbs out from his cabinet and starts to attack Detective Wade. He is able to overpower and kill the suspect but still gets injured. At the hospital getting treated, Jen wants to go under hypnosis through another doctor to help recall the information that Dr. Mead has done to her during their sessions. Jen visits another hypnotherapist to see what her subconscious has retained from her sessions with Dr. Mead. She puts Jen under hypnosis and Jen starts to convulse while she remembers. The doctor shakes Jennifer awake and reveals that Dr. Mead has put a control measure in place so no one else can do hypnosis on her to have complete control on her. She goes to the house of Xavier Sullivan, which she saw during her hypnosis, to find out any information about Colin. She is impulsive and doesn't wait for the detective before going on her own. She enters the house and sees pictures of Dr. Mead's wife, who has an uncanny appearance to her. Dr. Mead arrives behind Jen and reveals that Xavier was actually Colin's dad, who taught him everything concerning hypnosis. He then instructs Jennifer to sleep. At the hospital, Wade is informed that Dr. Mead is actually called Julian Sullivan, son of Xavier Sullivan, who used hypnosis to help the CIA plant false memories in people. This information makes him realize that Jen is in danger and leaves the hospital to get to her. Colin reveals that he chose her as she looks, talks and even smells just like his wife. The other people he met were not as perfect as Jen is to him. Jen can't move as Colin is painting her nails as she is under mind control. She realizes that the dreams she was having were actually his memories with his wife that he had planted in her head, as he is trying to use Jen to replace his wife by putting a new reality into her. Detective Wade enters and makes a noise that alerts Colin to his arrival. Colin instructs her to stay and immediately leaves her to find Wade. While Wade is looking for Colin, Jen uses all her willpower to break free of his trigger control. Colin and the detective fight and he instructs Jen to sleep, and while Jennifer is struggling to use her will to fight the mind control, she reaches for the gun, shoots and finally goes to sleep. Wade wakes Jen up and she finds comfort in Wade as he tells her that everything is over. Wade calls her my love, something only Dr. Mead calls her. The female doctor from before put a counter trigger on the word my love so that any time she hears that word when she is under hypnosis, she will come back to reality. The hypnosis breaks and she sees that it is actually Dr. Mead holding her. Catching him by surprise, she attacks him and runs away. She goes into a room to find Detective Wade bleeding as she had shot him and not Colin. Colin finds her but she uses Wade's gun to kill him. 1 month later, Jen is at her new job and visits Brian, He is still in a coma and she apologizes to him as it was her fault that she had dragged him into this situation. She goes to the police station to congratulate Wade on his promotion. He hands her a gift and leaving the station, he sees that he has gotten her a Hypnosis CD as a parting gift.